Welcome to Inside the Numbers, the nation's longest running sports betting talk show on the Empty the Bench podcast network. Now let's turn it over to Danny B.
Everybody, welcome to Inside the Numbers, episode 2 on Empty the Bench podcast network. Getting ready for a holiday weekend, Easter weekend. Make sure you enjoy it, be safe. About a week deep into the season. Interesting series in the Bronx. 3 shutouts. Did not expect that. What was it? 3-0 and 4-0, 6-4. Last night, Yankees 3-0. Mets 5-2. Very well could be 7-0. The bullpen dropped a couple of save opportunities. I think it was the 8th inning. Guerrero, 4 home runs already, 3 in one game against the Yankees in the Bronx. Yeah, fun week. Kershaw, we're going to get into that in a minute. Nick, the stat guy of Empty the Bench podcast network, he'll jump on in a second. You know, there's opinions, should he have gone? But I'll share my opinion with Nick, but it's a long season, just like it is when you're betting baseball. You don't try to make it all in 1 week or one game. You make it over the course of the season. So I thought it was a good decision to pull him. I'm an old school guy, but I thought that was the right choice. A lot of people thought they wanted to see it. It's been, 10 years since the last one, Hernandez, I think, in Seattle. So, yeah, interesting. We've seen some upsets. Atlanta off to a slow start. Padres 5-3. Mets playing early today. The show obviously starts at 4 o'clock, but we recorded earlier, right before the game actually started. Heavy favorite today against Arizona. Mets pitching looking well, looking good. McGill 2-0. Maxey 2-0, Bissett 1-0. I think Carrasco did well his first outing. So they're looking good. But, you know, the Mets, they always lose the games they're supposed to win. And let's see what happens. Phillies, they lost 3 straight. They're down in Miami. I kind of like them a little bit tonight, although the kid from Miami is a good pitcher. But I do like Philly tonight. Small underdog, maybe even money plus 105. It is early. But, yeah, interesting week. Having some fun watching the games. You know, they give it away free on the TV and the MLB package. But, yeah, it's been fun season. So let's get right into this, Nick. Join me and let's talk some soup here. Let's get right into the heavy topic. Clayton Kershaw, you've been big on this on the various shows, and Empty the Bench podcast network, it is expanding. I know you just picked up another show, a popular show, a comedy show, correct? That's going to feature a lot of popular guests, people that you've seen on TV, in the news, etc. But we'll get to that topic in a second. But right to the meat and potatoes. 7 innings, 80 pitches, I believe. Perfect game.
Yeah, it was crazy. So Clayton Kershaw pitches 7 innings. Perfect game, as you just said, dominating, completely dominating. We haven't seen this since Clayton Kershaw was the number 1 guy, the ace of the Dodgers. Now he's probably a 3 or a 4 at best.
Imagine that, right?
And he's got a history of being on the IL. He's been on the injured list 9 times in like the past 2 or 3 years, which is a lot because the guy can't stay healthy. He pitched on a major contract. Somehow the Dodgers brought him back on like a 2-year contract after they won the World Series. And people are complaining, and you and I have talked about this a lot, Danny, about how Twitter can be the wild, wild west.
That's brutal. You have to have tough skin to survive Twitter, that's for sure. And, you know, I got off of it for a while because of that and shut everything down. And just recently, and me and you talked about getting back and utilizing this platform, and you'll handle the show and all that. And it was a pretty easy decision for me since I didn't have much to do. And, you know, but listen, the show's just getting underway. This episode 2, we did a preview show on opening day. You can catch a replay of all the shows on Empty the Bench podcast network, the variety of shows, cooking shows, comedy shows starting next Friday, I believe, the 22nd. Yes, today's the 15th. And again, a holiday weekend. There's games all weekend. Dodgers at home. They beat up on the Reds last night, and they have a 4-game set with Cincinnati. Padres, they are hosting Atlanta again. They beat them up last night, I think 12-1, Nick, right? Mets, they did not play yesterday, but again, they're a heavy favorite, minus 245. Early report on anything I'm doing today would possibly be the Phillies tonight. It's the only game. Maybe I'm looking at the White Sox at home, a big underdog against San Francisco. Looking at that, there's value there. See, my approach to baseball a lot of times, Nick, is taking a couple of nice underdogs, plus 150, plus 140. You put 100. You're gonna, if you split out, you're making a little profit there, right? Kind of like the casinos do. They work on a 10%, and that's the mentality. I think you can't go for the home run all the time. You got to have a bunch of singles in this business.
Hey,
every once in a while, you hit a double, then a triple.
That's one of those things where I think we talked about this in the episode 0, where hitters today are all about pulling the baseball. That's why you see a lot of guys going to Yankee Stadium, because if you could bunt a baseball as a pop-up and it'll go over the right field wall.
Hey, speaking of that, wasn't it Rizzo with the big shift? He got down to, was it an accidental swing though? But he trickled something down the third baseline, right?
Yeah, and basically, I love to say it's like a 60 or 70 foot single, essentially.
There's nobody. The third baseman wasn't even. The third baseman was playing behind his second base bag at that point, right?
See, the problem is, and people don't think about this as a power hitter. Hey, if I took the 10 or 15 extra outs I made pulling into the shift and I bunted it down the third baseline, my average would be close to 300. If you think about it, I'd have 10 or 15 extra hits.
Unless you're running with a piano on your back, the way they leave that whole side open, anybody can make it down if you know how to bunt, but they don't bunt right these days either. You know, they don't
know how to.
Yeah, exactly. That's not part of their contract. I'm paid to hit the home runs. And, you know, speaking of home runs, what he did Wednesday night after they stepped on his finger, what was it? Hicks ran over Vlad Jr.'s finger. You know, think about it. How close to that could have that pinky or whatever it was could have just came off, right? Boom. It's a lot of man coming at you, metal spikes, right? Ooh, I mean, you didn't lose the finger.
They changed it because back in the day, old-fashioned spikes, when you were allowed to slide into second base, when I think it was a man's game back in the day. Yeah. Now I call it a let's see, do I want to be nice, or it's a pussy game today, Can't argue that. You can't slide into second base anymore. You literally now have to pull up almost when you go into second base, because if you hit the second baseman, you're out now. You can't sneeze on them.
Back in the day, as long as you can touch that bag, as long as you slid and you were able to, you can be way out. As long as your hand could somehow touch that bag, you go out of your way to take him out. I mean, that was part of it. Take him out hard. Go in hard. They always told you that. You go in hard. Make him... You know, no double play. Do what you got to do. Do not double up. Do not let him double you up.
I could tell you right off the bat, and you'll know when I say this, Mr. Charlie Hustle himself, Pete Rose, that's why he got the nickname, because he was so aggressive on the bases, taking people out. The catcher especially. I hate that they changed that rule as well.
Well, speaking of catches, he was so aggressive in the 1971 All-Star game. He took out Ray Fosse, who at the time was a great catcher. You know, big things ahead for him, Ray Fosse for the Oakland A's, and kind of ruined his career. 1973 in the playoffs against the Mets, which the Mets beat Cincinnati, which surprised me even to this day. I think that was Willie Mays last year. Slid hard into second. Buddy Harrelson from the Mets coming over at short, took him out. There was a big fight. Well, it didn't last long. Pete Rose body slammed Bud Harrelson, and that was it. And I got a little salty because I like Pete Rose, and he beat up one of my Mets. So I turned on him for a couple of years, but came back to love him and his style of play. From the day he was a rookie in 63, I think Pete came up in 63, he always played hard. You know, that's what I like about Brandon Nemo. I call him Finding Nemo, not Nemo, but Finding Nemo, whatever. On a walk, he hustles down first base. I like seeing that. You know, maybe he does the pray thing, but he's hustling on a walk. You ever watch him after?
Yes. Yep. You're talking about like a Derek Jeter type, where he constantly would run everything out, regardless.
The best ever. Jeter had more class than any ball player I ever saw, and the talent too. You always had good ball players off the field. They were average on the field, but he did it both. He was great on and off the field. I don't think you've ever heard of one bad thing he ever did, not even a jaywalking ticket or a traffic ticket.
The only thing, and it was off the field, and it really didn't get out, was all the big celebrity women that he dated. But again,
is that a crime? It's no crime.
There's no crime. I'm just saying that, and he hid that for the longest time. Like he managed to stay out of the limelight when he was dating women like Minka Kelly, or it came out that Mariah wrote a song about him, and apparently they were dating at one point. But if that's the worst thing that is out there about you, I think he'll sign up for something like that.
I wondered if Mickey Mantle was the host in New York in the 50s. Mickey could go anywhere he wanted. I wonder, if you asked, like, who would have been the man, Jeter or Mantle? I mean, Mickey had a swagger to him. He was out having fun. They loved him. Toots Shores. Are you familiar with that joint?
A little bit. Yep.
I've never been, but you always hear stories of that place. And you can imagine the fun they had.
I'll give you another one. DiMaggio with Marilyn Monroe.
Yep, absolutely. And that's another thing too. Marilyn Monroe. You can go into the conspiracies that the Kennedys took her out, and Joe DiMaggio was angry or something. You hear all types of different stories. But yeah, a lot of drama. Back in the day, a lot of fun. And you talk about like the steroids and stuff. Back in the 60s and 70s, after a long night out, they'd be popping uppers and black beauties,
pills, essentially. Yeah.
But that was accepted. That was part of it. You got drunk, you woke up, you had a hangover, popped a few of those things. Bennies, they called them, really.
Right. They didn't care. Back then, they didn't care. There were no rules. You did what you had to do to play the game. Now we're in such a society where you can't do a damn thing without being seen on, because there was no social media back then. There was no one taking pictures and exposing who you are as an athlete. Today, now you have TMZ and all these different platforms.
Cameras everywhere. Back then, they didn't have the lenses to zoom in on you. They couldn't come. They got advanced as time went by. But
you're talking about paparazzi. Yeah,
a lot more privacy back in the day for the celebrities, the ball players. Even in the 80s, it was common after a ball game, the Nets come into our town, a couple of them. Darryl Dawkins, that's how we got to meet him. Actually, our friend was the ball boy for the Nets. Brought him in, introduced us. I was only 23, 22 when he came around. Lawrence Taylor, my buddy, was his limo driver. So back in the day, they would come around. The Giants always, Curtis McGriff. The year they beat Denver was at 88, right? Their first win it was Denver in 88. That after the season, you saw him a lot. You can't go out. You really can't go out. And that was Darryl Dawkins' job when he was he was like a liaison for the Sixers. He'd take the younger players and he would tell them how to stay out of trouble. He would say, listen, you got all of this. You're going to have this. If you need this, this is like, he would kind of teach you the ropes, what to avoid. We know you're going to do it, but do yourself a favor and do the team a favor. If you're going to get drugs or whatever you're doing, don't do it yourself or whatever, a prostitute, whatever it might be.
There's a great book, and I'm forgetting, it's in my other room. Kurt Radomski, who was the Mets clubhouse manager, wrote a book about how in that clubhouse and how he was getting PEDs for all different guys, including Roger Clemens, who sued, if you remember correctly, and won. He won because I think it was about Brian McNamee, who was his trainer. And he said that he got a bunch of things for those guys. I don't know how Roger Clemens managed to win that case. I don't know. But
yeah, you know what? There's always been stuff going on. The cocaine of the Mets back in the day, the accusations, partying, Darryl Strawberry, Dwight Gooden. I think, who was it? Missed the ticket tape parade in 86. They were banged up. Was it Strawberry or one of them? I think
Strawberry. Yeah.
They were probably looking out a Manhattan window like, oh, my God, I'm supposed to be in that caravan right now. God, but yeah, I'll do another blast. I'll worry about that tomorrow. Yeah, those were crazy times. Keith Hernandez partied a lot back in the day. They smoked cigarettes in the fucking dugout, Nick.
Yeah, they can't do that anymore. Actually, I'll give you another one.
Jim Leyland for the Pittsburgh Pirates. The manager, Leyland, he smoked like a madman, especially when one of his relief pitchers was on. Forgot the guy, but anytime this guy, he smoked like 10 packs of cigarettes in an inning.
I'll give you another one, which you can't do anymore, and I think for good reason. They banned tobacco in the clubhouses. And the reason they banned tobacco in the clubhouses is because Tony Gwynn, we all know Tony Gwynn, Hall of Famer Tony Gwynn, played his full career with the Padres.
Right.
He died because he got mouth cancer from the tobacco, because all the guys back then, they would, I don't know why they did this, they would almost like put it on their
That was
face.
nasty. Honestly, I played a lot of ball. I played independent ball, and even in high school when I was a kid, they'd be chewing, spitting all over. The sunflower seeds were popular too. But yeah, I never liked it. It was common. Spit cans they'd have in the dugouts, and just it was gross. You got a lot of guys strike up, come back, spit a big chunk of chew. They fuck with you, put it in your glove and stuff like that. They do a lot of pranks, especially in the minor leagues. The pranks that go on in the minor leagues, they have fun. But yeah, we're all over the place, and that's the show.
I'll drag it back to what we're talking about, what's on the screen here. So we were talking about Pete Rose and the aggressiveness. Nolan Ryan was another guy I was going to bring up since we're talking about pitching here. A guy who never wanted to be taken out. He would, back in the day, say, I'm pitching a complete game. He could be pitching like shit, and he would still pitch a complete game, because that was the mentality back then. There was no reliever. There was no reliever, specialty relievers like today. Well, let's have an opener who pitches 2 innings, and then we're going to go to this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. That's not the mentality.
No, I mean, the first reliever, I think we all remember, Tug McGraw was big in the 70s, and he died. His son is a famous singer, right? I forgot his first name, but I know Tim McGraw. Tim McGraw.
That's
but
it.
Tug, he went on with the Phillies, but you gotta believe was his motto. That was one of the first relievers that I remember. But pitchers went. How many times did they go the full 9 innings back in the day? A complete game shutout. Maybe a pitcher would do 12 to 15 complete games in his season. Maybe more.
I mean, there'd be times when those guys would pitch into the extra innings and pitch a complete game. Like I've heard stories of Nolan Ryan who pitched 12 or 13 innings in a complete game.
And get stronger as the game went. One pitcher I always remember is the fight he had with Robin Ventura, the blood pitcher.
Robin Ventura was outmatched. He should not.
Texan. That's a big Texan. You don't mess with those Texans, especially the big ones like Clemens and Nolan Ryan. Nolan Ryan was a beast. Didn't pitch very well with the Mets, that's for sure. He was probably involved in the worst trades the Mets ever made. They traded him for Jim Fregosi. Jim Fregosi at the time was a good second baseman, I think, for the Angels.
Right.
And he never turned out to do anything. And then, Nolan Ryan won 300 games, but he lost 300 games, right? If you look at his record, I think he won 300 and something and he lost 300. It's right around there. So he did take his share of losses. But you're right. He was a bull. 9 innings was not a problem. Let's go 10. He'd pitch a doubleheader if you let him, Nick.
So he went 324 and 292.
All right, so I was close.
No, you were pretty much right on the money. That he lost a lot of games because he pitched a lot of complete games. Yeah. He always got the qualification for the win or the loss, because people forget you have to pitch 5 innings to qualify for a win or a loss in today. Right. He was doing that like it was nothing. 5 innings to him.
They all did though, Nick. Not just him, but yeah, he was definitely one of the strongest, most durable pitchers. But even Seaver, Steve Carlton, you can go on all those pitchers from back in the day. Gaylord Perry, Bert Blyleven, the Negroes.
Koufax.
Sandy Koufax. He lives not too far from me here in Hellertown. He stops by Easton. He's kind of standoffish guy, but he shops at this one place. He only buys suits at one place.
He'd be a great guest if you could somehow get him.
You know what? I saw him at the baseball writers' dinner several years ago. He was standing there. And after the event, they walk away. They all had wine. I actually got his wine glass.
Oh, wow.
I got the wine glass. There's pictures of me. I got Koufax, and I took a last sip. So I drank Sandy Koufax's blood. That explains the strength of my arm as I'm getting older. That's when I'm like trying to figure out, I'm 60 years old and I still can throw. I got a pellet. The kids are afraid to catch. And these kids are like 13, 14. And they don't expect it. But yeah, I have to contribute that to drinking the blood of Sandy Koufax. So.
But talk about a guy who really put it out there, really loved the game of pitching, game of baseball. That would be Koufax.
Oh, he was a master of it, and he didn't pitch that long either. You had Don Drysdale, too, back in the day. didn't have the kind of, but at one time, Drysdale and Koufax were like Spahn and Sane. I don't know. That's before your time. Warren Spahn, he had 360 wins. And Spain, Johnny Spain. So it used to be Spahn and
You also had
pray
Fernando.
for
Right?
rain. Yes, Spahn and Spain pray for rain because they were so back to back. So they would just say pray for rain. Spahn and Spain pray for rain. That was the motto.
They had Fernando too, right?
Who?
Fernando Venezuela
Well,
also.
he played in the 80s and 70s, late 70s, early 80s. I think his best year was in 80, early 80, 81, 82. But he was unstoppable when he first came out of Mexico. His eyes used to roll. And you had another great pitcher from Boston. I forgot his name back in the.
But he made the big windup kind of famous, right? Fernando Venezuela.
He had like a head thing. His head kind of went back. It was kind of bizarre. But he definitely had a different windup. One of the first bizarre windups, if you want to talk about weird, was Kent DeColvey from the pit. He came low. He came like from the ground.
Oh, you're talking about side armors.
Yeah, but he was bizarre. I'm trying to think of the kid from Boston, the Red Sox, the pitcher back in the 70s that was very good. Another, because I'm just thinking as I'm watching the game progress and the changes and like the reviews and the microphone on the umpire, which is not speeding the game up.
I think that's horrible. So now you're turning it into football. That's what you're doing. But
there'll never be football. And the USFL kicks tomorrow night. All the games are in Birmingham, right? Every game played in Birmingham. I guess they're trying to make it cost efficient till the league develops some type of budget.
Right. But let's go full circle now that we brought up the pitching. So now that we talked about the Dodgers and Nolan Ryan and durability, so what do you think about, in hindsight, the whole Clayton Kershaw situation? Right move, wrong move? I think you and I are on the same page with this.
Yeah, I agree with you. We talked about that off camera, and it's a long season, injury prone. Dodgers, they're the team to beat, obviously. Started off a little rough, but after this homestand, they should be a few games over 500. I think it was the right move. It's the first game of the season coming up. When's the last time he pitched, Nick? In July or August? Did he pitch in September last year?
Well, I think he did. He had
in the postseason. Did he pitch in the postseason?
Oh, wait a minute. No, he was injured up until the World Series.
Right. So, it's a good move. 7 strong innings. What happens if he gets hurt? You just don't take that chance. It's April. Maybe you do that in May or June, late. I don't know. Maybe the arm builds some strength.
People don't realize what it takes to be an athlete. I don't think people think when they turn on the TV and they watch these guys, well, they should be Iron Men. They should be able to do this. People forget also they just came off a 100-day MLB lockout where they were not stretched out. If they had the 100 days that they were sitting on their asses doing nothing because they were too busy negotiating, because they were too busy thinking about the money and not about the fans, which, by the way, I'm going to bring up something in a minute, which you're going to find hilarious, that these people who are sitting on their couch at home have nothing else better to do except watch a baseball game. You go out there, you go train to be an athlete, and tell me how hard it is. Because you won't know it until it hits you.
Baseball is the toughest sport. To hit a baseball is one of the hardest things to do, number one. Criticism comes easy when you're not the guy doing it. It's very tough. Listen, it's tough to play college ball, never mind professional ball. You're right. They had 100 days to ponder. Is there going to be a season mentally? But a good ball player should prepare for the season regardless.
And legally they couldn't.
Always game ready.
But legally they couldn't. They were not allowed to step on any fields. They were not allowed to do anything. That's part of the issue with the CBA not being in place.
Well, they weren't even allowed to play catch in their backyard.
Well, no, they were all doing that because I saw a video. But legally they could not step on and do the physical training at the facilities.
Okay, but there are options. There's other fields, to keep in shape. I know a lot of ball players, they went overseas to play. They used to go down to Dominican and
they can't do that anymore. They can't do that anymore.
See, this is everything's, back in the day though, these guys didn't make much money when I was a kid. 100,000, 150,000 was, an average salary. And then Catfish Hunter, Reggie Jackson started landing the $1 million deals. The Reggie Bar, that was.
And by the way, Reggie Jackson's a jerk. I'm sorry, because
not a nice guy. I ran into him a couple of times over the years. Not very friendly, but good ball player. But not, I don't know. He wasn't a great ball player.
He's a Hall of Famer, no doubt. But he's a jerk. He came out recently and said, "Let the fans have the moment. Leave Kershaw." And obviously, he doesn't remember being a ball player and how hard it was.
Well, you know what? He played in a different era. You know, they were tougher. They weren't making the money right now, and they didn't look at it as like, got it. This guy gets hurt. I got to pay him $25 million, and he ain't even pitching. So the owners they factored that in. Believe it or not, you're an investment to them. I'm not going to hurt my investment. Years ago, you were very replaceable. Well, not very. Like, you can't afford to lose Tom Seaver. The Mets couldn't anyway. Still upset he never had a no-hitter with them. His first no-hitter he had was with Cincinnati. I was devastated when they traded him, too. You want to talk about devastation? And the same day, I think Elvis Presley died. It was a very sad day for us back in August of 77, I think that was. But I'm on today without any notes. Hey, that's pretty good. My memory's pretty sharp without ginkgo, or whatever that thing is.
You are doing good. But the one thing I was going to say, if you want to blame somebody for what happened with Kershaw and the Dodgers, blame Commissioner Rob Manfred. And the reason I say that is because he could have stopped that lockout a long time ago. If he really wanted baseball back on the field, he should have said to the two sides, "Hey, fuck ups, get back on the field, stop with the negotiations, come to a deal, negotiate while you're playing," because a lot of other things do that.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you work it out. What was the big thing? I mean, what did it save by wasting 100 days? Was there
Nothing.
an advantage? Not much, right? What was
No, it was nothing.
So you wasted 100 days. You cost yourself 7 to 10 days of the season, setting players back. You got to worry about injuries now because now they have less training. They're back in the game.
In technicality, they lost no games. They're going to play all 160.
Oh, I know that, but they lost a week, you know, and the players weren't as prepared, and you can get hurt by not being prepared physically, too.
That's why you see pitchers in the first couple of weeks, they're going to go 4, maybe 5 innings because they're not built up.
No. And again, they're not built, and it's just a different game. You know, you got how many pitches, you know, usually you'll see 3 pitchers in a game, right? For a team that's even winning 5-2.
Forget it. Like I said earlier, you're not going to see complete games. A complete game is a rarity today.
That's your no-hitter now. A complete game is your no-hitter or a perfect game. So when you see somebody go 9 innings, that's hey, good job. Complete games were a gimme back in the day. 15, like I said, but starters were different back then. They pitched on less rest too, right? Weren't they on 4 days instead of 5 back in the 70s?
Nolan Ryan at times pitched on 3 days rest, and it didn't even bug him. But there's more strenuous things that go on today than back then. There was not as many rules. There was not as many regulations. You could take steroids back then.
But you know what? I don't remember any huge ball players in the 70s or 80s. Steroids, obviously, in the 90s, mid-90s. But, you know, the players some of them were big, like Dave Parker, but just big, you know. Dave Winfield, just big. Not very muscular, but I don't remember any big muscular guys back in the 70s. I think they used a lot of uppers, though, a lot of caffeine related.
They kept them in do you remember the big joke that in the dugouts, obviously before my time, but I've studied it, is in the 80s, or especially more my generation, the 90s, they put bowls of PEDs. I forgot which one it was that they would put in the locker rooms, but they would put it in the dugout. It looked like candy, and they would just eat them essentially. And I'm like, now you can't do that at all.
Yeah, you know, we don't know what really goes on in those locker rooms. You hear stories, unless you've played the game and you've been there. You can only imagine.
It was HGH.
That's HGH. You know, that's popular now, the HGH.
It's not legal anymore.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not really meant for the young kids. It's meant for older people my age that if you're having issues, I've never done it, but I have a friend that's in his 80s. It said it was like a wonder drug from the fountain of youth. But the downside when you do that, if you have like a tumor or something, it increases the growth of that. So
Jason Giambi.
Oh yeah, didn't he just die?
No, his brother.
Brother Jeremy. Jeremy died.
But just to when you were talking about the growth of it, Jason Giambi, when he was with the Yankees, I don't know if you remember this, Danny, but when he was hurt, he was sick. If you remember, he had to sit out for a good month or two with the benign tumor, and that was all I think because he was using HGH. I think.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it definitely. I know a lot of my friends messed with it, and one of them I don't want to mention his name, but
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
He got sick again from it.
You got to be careful with that shit because
he had a cancer. He beat the cancer, and then the thing started up again. And I don't know, but
what people don't remember either is we actually have HGH in us that actually is natural. When you start messing with the synthetic hormones like that, you're gonna fuck up your body. People don't realize that.
You want to do steroids without taking steroids, you release your natural hormones by squatting if you can, because when you're squatting, it really and working your back, it releases natural hormones in you. So I'm a big believer in keeping the squats going, the core. So now we're talking bodybuilding. We're all over the place. You want to talk about drinks and dinner tonight next, Nick? Or you want to get back to
let's finish this one up though. So Clayton Kershaw, you and I are on the same page.
I am. You know what? You have two sides of everybody. The fan wants to see it. Maybe he would have pulled it off. But
fans are greedy.
What's that?
Fans are greedy.
And it was 3-0 at the time. Dodgers went on to win 7-0, I think.
Yeah.
But I think when they pulled him, it was a 3-0 game, right?
Yes. And so they were winning. It was comfortable. Yes. Yeah.
It was a 3-0 game. But yeah, I think it was a smart move. I was taken back that they pulled him, but you look at it, it's a long season, and so management made the right move. Fans don't like it, but it's hard to please the fans, and the fans are angry, period. I mean, they've been mistreated financially, what they got to pay to go to the games. It's just not the same for me. And I haven't been to a game in almost 4 years. It was in Boston. I discussed this on the opening show, on a preview show. Last time I was at a Met game was in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. The Iron Pigs, the AAA for the Phillies, they're here. I might go once or twice. I think my kids are going next week, actually. Going to head up north for the holiday weekend, Nick. I'm going to be in the city area. Not in the city, though. I'm going to look from afar. I like being on the Hudson River, looking at the city at nighttime. What a great view. Nothing prettier than that. If you've never had a chance to witness that, it's one of the best views until you get through that tunnel or the bridge. And then you just smells. It just reeks. It's just an ugly city. So I'm going to stop up for Easter Sunday, stop by, have some family time. But besides that, back to work on Monday, Nick, we get the show back and we record earlier for those tuning in. We record early on Mondays, early on Fridays. They are available 4:00 sharp on Mondays and on Fridays. Fridays, we like to preview some of the matchups. Monday, we recap and we talk about some of the midweek games, I should say. But look what we got. We got Tampa Bay playing the White Sox this weekend, Nick? Or is that when Tampa Bay playing the White Sox?
Let me check that for you.
San Francisco's playing the White Sox, right?
I think San Francisco. Let me see.
San Francisco playing the White Sox.
No. San Francisco's playing Cleveland.
Cleveland, that's right. Cleveland is the game I was thinking because I looked real quick. I said, a nice home dog plus 140. You're right. White Sox are hosting Tampa Bay.
And Cleveland's a mess, like an absolute mess.
Yeah, that's why they're a big dog at home. They're 4-2 though. I think they're 4-2. They have a winning record, but
that's going to go away quickly once the season comes in.
What else we have? Tampa White Sox. The American League East. You got 4-3s across the board with Toronto, Yanks, and the Rays, right? And Boston's 3-3.
Yep.
Yankees are at Baltimore this weekend. They should sweep,
that's what they all say. Should sweep.
Well, that's like the Mets. Are they gonna? They could be losing right now. I know the game just started. I don't know, but the Yankees should sweep Baltimore. They got to take the series, but it's the teams you're supposed to beat usually is when they have trouble, and the Mets anyway.
The Mets better win today, especially with the unveiling of the Tom Seaver statue.
Well, that's a jinx. Anytime they have that, they unveil a number. The home team usually loses, retire a jersey. I've seen it happen, but big Tom Seaver fan. I cried when he died. To be honest with you, it broke
One of
my
the
heart.
greatest Mets of all time, in my opinion.
Mr. Met, but no, actually, Mr. Met was Eddie Kranepool. They called him Mr. Met, but Tom Seaver he wore the Met colors, number 41, always in my heart. He got me through a tough childhood. Whenever he pitched, I was there watching. Even when on the radio, on the road games, late at night in San Francisco, I'd be up on my little transistor radio, listening to him, a little ear plug in. 1 o'clock, extra innings. Get to bed already. You got school in the morning. Well, anyway, what else? Again, Phillies tonight. I like their chances. You got Eflin and Lopez. Phillies dropped 3 straight. Lopez is throwing good. He's a good ball player. I think his ERA is 1.80. Anything interesting? Atlanta, San Diego got nothing on that. Nothing on the Reds, Dodgers. But yeah, I would peak a little bit at Cleveland, but you made a good point. White Sox, Tampa, nothing on that. You know who surprised me so far? Colorado. Nice little start for the Rockies.
Chris Bryant, their big acquisition in the offseason. Still don't understand why Chris Bryant went there. Obviously, it was a money situation.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought he'd be in like a big city, New York or Boston or somewhere, but
so did I.
But he should tear up that field out there. The wind, the altitude. He should have at least 35 home runs.
In that bandbox with the high altitude, yeah, definitely he should have.
Rizzo. Before we get on out of here, Rizzo's having a nice little year. 3 dingers.
Him and Stanton but Stanton always gets off to a good start. Rizzo's always been a
good ball player. I was hoping, because there was rumors before they moved him last year, that Rizzo and Bryant would go to the Mets, or one of them was supposed to come over.
Yes, Bryant.
Yeah. I was hoping that they landed him at third base, the Mets. I think that's their missing link right now. Again, the Mets are the Mets. They're 5-2. The bullpen concerns. The starting rotation so far looking pretty good, and that's without the big guy, Jake. And I'm going to question his year. His health. If you see him go out one more time after 2 or 3 starts, his career might be in jeopardy.
Well, so he made a mistake right off the bat before the season started. I'm opting out, even though he hasn't done anything. So if he has a bad season,
he just choked himself. And that's the whole thing. You got to watch what you say. It's about performance. And again, he's got a track record of getting hurt, and he's 32 years old. He's not a spring chicken. When he's on, he's on. Nobody pitches like him. To me, when he's healthy, he's the best in the league, but injury prone, like Kershaw. So again, that was a good move. Kershaw's 5? He's got to be up there, 36 maybe.
So DeGrom is 33, and okay. Kershaw is 34.
Okay. Again, these guys, they're not built. It's a different game. Good decision. If it was maybe a couple of months, well, maybe even a month from now, maybe 2 starts from now, all right, let him go. But not the first start, especially coming off of an injury and being on the DL before the season ended. But yeah, Nick, I think that's about it for this Friday. You got something?
Let me ask you one more thing.
Please.
So what do you think about...
I'm sorry, I wanted to cover something else. Go ahead.
Okay. But what do you think about the Apple TV Plus and the K-Rod cast and Peacock and all these extra, exclusive things to watch the games? Are you getting a little tired of all the digital that you have?
Yeah, I am. Again, me, I'm not a technical guy at all. It's hard for me to even, I couldn't do the app thing. I have my son, hey, how do I get to Showtime? How do I move this thing around? So I like the Peacock channel for the old TV shows, but sports, I'm relying on, the MLB channel, the NFL channel.
Just so you know, all those games on Peacock, they have to be East Coast games, because the Peacock games on Sunday start at 11:30 a.m.
I don't know. I understand change. I'm trying to embrace it, but I like what was. I'll say that week in and week out, but I'm trying to change with change, and it's a tough transition for me. But no, I keep everything simple, Nick. I'm pretty much on the same day. Every day's the same. I got my system, the gym, my work, what I do, the family time. It's like a Groundhog Day for me. It's pretty much. I
There's
don't really go on vacations. If I do, it's 2 or 3 days. I don't go far.
there's a simple saying I believe in: keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah, we talked about that on a previous show. That's how I approach sports betting. Simple stuff, especially when you got clients that are not too familiar. They're not seasoned players. They don't know how to navigate the computer. You got to sit there. No, no, not that button. No, what do you see? No, we're looking for run line. No, not team runs game. So you got to be a little patient with it, but everything's changing. Keep it simple, stupid, and that's before I get out of here, we started talking on the previous show about my career in HBO, all that neat stuff. 1994, I started. And, one of the first things I did was before people bought picks on the internet, my play of the day or whatever for 10, $20, they bought it through the phone on 900 messages. Remember, like the sex lines, you call the sex lines for same thing with sports picks. You pay $20 for a few picks. So that was the big thing. So I worked for a nationwide score phone. It was free, and I would update the scores all day long, 7 days a week. Once in a while, I get a day off. So I sat there. Let's take a look at your action now in the first inning. It's the Mets 17-0 over Arizona. Yankees, Baltimore just done. And I would do that all day long, recapping every 10 minutes, and it was fun. In between now, guys, if you're looking for a bailout game, we have one tonight on a recorded message. It's only $25. This game doesn't win. You get tomorrow's play free. 1-900, blah, 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 blah. Now back to your games in progress in the seventh inning. Dodgers on top of Boston, 7-3. Vlad goes deep. Not Vlad, but his father, Vlad, when he played for the Dodgers.
Yep.
Vlad, he was a beast too. Let's not forget it. But yeah, I did that, and I had a parrot back then, Moses, 20 years, miss him. He'd sit there in the room with me as I'm sitting there using scores and odds, updating the scores in every 15 minutes and running through. You ever try to do that on a Saturday with a million games? Wow. A million games. And then once you're done with the rotation, you got to start back over because every 15 minutes it has to be updated. By the end of the day, I'd be there. The bird fucking started talking, listening to me. I'm like, you're interrupting me. He started giving out scores. And then he started saying, Mets suck. Dallas sucks, but not in the 90s they did, and they were good. But yeah, I think back, and that was some fun time. I did that. It was fun. Very demanding, though. I was, by the end of the night, my eyes were like this. And
you were bugging out.
I did that for a long time. The Voice of America, Danny B. I'd sit there, and it was fun, but it was a long time ago. Now you just pick up your phone. And the popular thing, too, that then the Sports Now pages came out where you can get the baseball scores and the football scores. They're still available, these little pages, but now your cell phone has everything that you need. But, yeah, 27 years ago, I was pitching 900 numbers, updating score phones coast to coast, and it was fun times. Things were different. This is when gambling was still gray. You had the overseas casinos, but they weren't considered gray. You had sports books advertising on the buses in Manhattan. Millennial Sports Book. Jesse the Body Ventura he was the governor of Minnesota. He was sponsoring one of the sports books after he got out of office. And then out of nowhere, everything changed. I think the change was meant for the bigger picture, stopping the overseas stuff as much as possible and getting legalization underway. So before we launch our product, let's stop the competition by making things difficult. Make sense?
Yeah, and what's interesting, and you'll have to get into this on another episode, is offshore.
Yeah, we'll do that. I can tell you a lot about the overseas industry, the offshore, how it originated. I go back a long time. A lot of my friends are still over there. So, yeah, it's changed a lot. Bodog was one of the pioneers. English sports betting, one of the big names. Bowman's over in Europe. Top Turf.
Well, now you have OTB.
OTB, yeah. OTB was popular when I was a kid in the 70s just for horse track racing, off-track betting.
Just so people know, OTB, off-track betting. Just so people understand.
Yeah, OTB, that was popular. You bet the horses at a corner shop ran by the state. New York was the first to do that, I think. New York State might have been one of the first. OTB. Actually, I had an old friend that he started that up back in the 70s. He told me his
Oh, wow.
story. Yeah, he's an older fella. He might even not be with us no more. Forgot his name. But anyway, Nick, again, only thing I would say on the record, and it's early Phillies tonight, little underdog. Take a little peek at Cleveland. Again, once we get in a position to do a live show later in the day when the numbers and the lineups ain't even out, Nick. A lot of the lineups ain't even out yet. So it's hard to be accurate at 1 o'clock when we record the show. But anyway, guys, have a great holiday weekend. Thanks for spending time with us inside the numbers. And again, visit Empty the Bench Podcast Network and give them a love. Give them some love. Follow them. Subscribe. And it's growing. There's going to be a new show next Friday. I think you're going to like it. From what I heard, great guest, Nick. I don't know if you want to indulge any secrets or save that for another show.
Well, let's put it this way. I told you beforehand, the Big Bad broadcast starts on the 22nd. Clint Howard will be the first guest on that show.
Howard's brother. He played Gentle Ben, I think. He did.
And then there's some other. I can't go too much after that because it's not confirmed.
Nothing's confirmed but him. Okay, that's a great show. I mean, he's been around the acting business for a long time. Ron Howard, obviously the famous of two Howard brothers. But he also, while he was doing the Andy Griffin show, his brother was doing Gentle Ben. It's a story about a bear. Gentle Ben. He was a bear that was gentle. I wouldn't have him in my house, though, not for nothing, but that's just me.
But just to give you a little other teaser, on another show, the Hearst Show, which is on our network, but to bring it to baseball, we actually, I interviewed with him, Zach Hampel, who's the big YouTube influencer creator, goes to all the MLB stadiums every year. And
he catches 100 foul balls a game.
Yeah, he has like 11,000 baseballs that he's caught. He caught A-Rod's 3,000th hit, which was a home run.
Right.
He caught Mike Trout's first career home run.
Like, this guy must have a tracking device on that damn baseball to have 11,000 baseballs. I know a lot of them he just jockeyed at the game, begging and catching foul balls or whatever, or batting practice.
Yeah, he went. Most of it was in batting practice. He would go. He knew how to talk to the players, which you told the story about that in episode 0.
Yeah, you get there if you have good seats, especially or during batting practice. You're out in the outfield like Philly. You can lean right over, talk to the guys as they're shagging balls. Hey, throw me up one. My kid, give me one more. Met fans, hey, we came all the way from New York. It's Philly. It's a tough city. Come on, get me a couple of balls. You can do that for player to player. The most I ever left in one game was 7.
Wow.
But my little guy gave one away, and I was like, what happened to the other ball? And he was like, what was he, 5 years old? He goes, you had so many, Dad. I gave him to the kid next door. He looked next to us. He looked sad. And I'm like, that's a good thing. But no, you just jockey, man. You're basically begging. Hey, man, Met fan my whole life, haven't won a World Series for us. Come on, a little love. But that worked. I got Jake DeGrom's signature and David Wright in the same game. That was nice.
I mean, you told me the story. I don't know if we have time to do it now. Maybe we'll do it on another episode. The Ricky Henderson story you told me.
Which one was that?
Remember you at spring train? Oh,
maybe in the airport.
I think you told me once. Oh, I was talking to somebody else.
Okay, because I did run into Ricky Henderson in the mid '80s. Him, Winfield, and Mattingly coming back from an All-Star game. I think the game was in Houston, '85 or '86. They were coming out of Newark, and we were coming out basically at the same time on the runway. Not the runway when you're coming through the terminal.
Oh, the security I
had a couple of minute conversation with him. He was good. I bumped into Junior one time in Baltimore.
Oh, wow.
Stayed in the same hotel with him.
Wow.
Got his signature. I got to break it out on the Hilton register because I didn't have no pen. I said, what are you doing here? He goes, we're playing tomorrow night. I go, that's right. I go, who's throwing? He goes, Randy, because Randy Johnson was.
Yeah, that was Seattle back in the day.
Yeah, and I got in the elevator with him. We stayed on the same floor, and I was like, who's pitching? And I go, oh, he's a big favorite tomorrow. And then he saw me breaking out the sports pager. And then he kind of like, okay, I ain't going to talk to you. Because I started talking betting with him, of course.
Well, right, because back in the day, still.
Yeah.
Gambling was a no-no in baseball.
I don't know if I talked about Ricky Henderson with you other than my airport experience.
There was another story. I was talking to somebody else last night that he used to work for, actually, since we were talking about phone, Sports Phone. If you ever heard of Sports Phone back in the day.
It sounds familiar.
They gave scores. They would record it and put the scores in. And
that's what I did, Nick.
Right. So it's the same thing. It was a similar thing.
Mine was 1-800-32-LUCKY, I think the number was. You'd call. What it was a place for the sports bettors to get odds for the games too. And it was linked into a certain sports book overseas. So they had thousands of people, and the only way they didn't have an online presence, right? So the only way they can find out what the odds, unless they called first and were on the phone with a representative, was to call the free pick line, and I would update the odds, the games in progress, and final scores. And it would go in categories. Today's opening odds are brought to you by English Sports Betting. Open up an account today and get a free $50 bet. That's 1-800, whatever the phone number was. Now let's get today's opening matchups in the American League.
That's what it was. That's what it was.
I did. Yeah, I did that for 7 years, basically.
The only difference was there was no gambling lines attached to it back then. It was just scores and updates. And
yeah, but they were promoting probably something. They were probably promoting picks or something. We weren't promoting. We were promoting basically the casino that my boss owned. You know, today's scores are brought to you by English Sports Betting. Open up an account today and receive a $50 sign-up bonus. That's English Sports Betting. Now today's opening numbers at 1 o'clock. All times are Eastern. And then I run down the rotation, starting pitches and roll. And then when the games would start, now let's get to your games underway. And like by the end of the day, like I said, I'm talking to myself for 12 hours. That's why I talk a lot. I talk to myself a lot.
But long story short, so my one of the guys I was talking to, he's like, I was working for Sports Phone. They sent us to a spring training game in Port St. Lucie, of all places, for the Mets. And Ricky Henderson was there, was probably with the Athletics, I'm assuming. And a fan, he said, a young kid at the time, Ricky, sign my whatever, please. And he kept screaming. And finally, he said, Ricky Henderson turned around and said, go fuck yourself, to a kid.
Yeah, you know what? He wasn't very friendly from what I was told. I built a relationship with Joe Torre's son, Mike Torre, and he was always around the ballparks and stuff like that. And, that was I did a show with him and Roberto Clemente's kid at the same time. Sons of their fathers were great ball players. Roberto, of course. Joe Torre, not only a great manager, he was a good ball player, really good ball player with the Cardinals. I think he won a batting title 1 year. But I had them on at my podcast about 2014. And just hearing the stories, what was it like to be around Busch Stadium or whatever the Cardinal Stadium was back in the 60s, and listening to him describe his father, taking caroms off the wall in Pittsburgh. It's just chilling to hear these guys talk about their dads. But yeah, Ricky was standoffish. Sandy Koufax, standoffish. When I was a kid, you go to the ballpark, they would go out of their way to sign for you, Nick. They would look for, hey, you got your program? Hey, give me that. They just walk around. Hey, there's Tug. There's Rusty Starr, Buddy Harrells. Hey, Buddy. Tom, John Matlack, Kuzman, Danny Frisella.
It's not the same. You can tell the generational gaps today, because if you see an athlete today, hey, like a kid, for the most part, for a young kid, they will sign an autograph. They have no problem, because to them, that's their reputation. If they don't sign for a young kid, it looks really bad if they don't do it. But if teenager and above, they could give two shits. They don't care.
There's still a couple of good ones out there. Like I said, DeGrom was happy to throw me. This was his first year in 2014. He was nobody. I think he had a losing year that year. And David Wright, some of them went out of their way, but it was
David Wright was the best, because when I went to the stadium, this was at Shea. As soon as we went up to the front, he was right there.
Right.
He didn't care. I think he stood there for about 15, 20 minutes and just was literally, I thought his arm was going to fall off by the time he
did that. We did that in Philly for us. I threw him a ball. I had a ball. I said, David, sign a ball. Because I already got, I had all those balls. And he had a pen. He was talking to all the kids. And then he goes, hey, throw me that ball. He made a finger catch with it because he had pens going on. He had a ball in it. He made like a great catch with the ball. And I gave him a little flip. It wasn't like I whipped it at him.
right.
But he caught it like with a little pinky. He drove it in, signed it, rolled it back on the dugout. Thank you, bud. It's right over there. Him and DeGrom.
You know who was good at that too, but he had issues in his career? Jose Reyes was actually good at that too.
Jose, Well, we liked Jose when
until he got in trouble.
Jose Reyes. So you know what? I knew when he left the Mets after he won the batting title to go to where
The
did he go?
Marlins. Yep.
Did he go up north too after that? He
That
went
was
up
after that
but he
because he
went
got
down
in
to
trouble.
Toronto. He went up to Toronto too, then Colorado, I think, after that, right?
Right, but once he went to Toronto and then he went to Colorado, he got in trouble for alleged abuse.
Yeah, alleged. You know, somebody else is going through that. Now that's what I'm saying. When you're in the limelight, you got to really watch your P's and freaking Q's. You got
Chapman had that issue too at one point. Aroldis Chapman,
Aroldis Chapman,
the closer for the Yankees. Yep,
speaking of shortstops, Mets Ray Ordonez. I don't know if you go
I
back
do
that.
know him. Yep,
He was part of the '86 team. I was in down Atlantic City in Ripley's, believe it or not, and I was in there with him throughout the tour.
wow.
I got his signature too on the Ripley ticket too down there. I was behind him the whole time. He didn't speak a word of English, but very nice, just smiling at me. I'd be talking to him, he's just smiling, like, hey, thank you. But
By the way,
okay.
I also found you were asking before. In 1971, Joe Torre won the batting title. So
For the Cardinals, yeah, he's a catcher. Started off as a catcher, went over to third base for a bit, then to first base. Managed the Mets too back in the day. That's right, back in the '70s. Yogi Berra managed the Mets too.
They were player managers back then too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
What?
I think Joe Torre was a player manager at one point, wasn't
With
he?
the Mets, yeah, with the Mets. I think that's the same year Joe Youngblood came up with Lee Mazzilli. Not sure if, it might have been 7. I think Mazzilli came up 75 or 76. But yeah, Torre was not the first. I think Frank Robinson was the first.
Frank Robinson was the first. Yogi was a player manager, I think, at one point.
With the Yankees, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but he wasn't doing. Yeah, he was a great ball player, Yogi. How do you not love Yogi Berra? But you know who they say, and Pete Rose, they say is awesome to be around. My friend, older guy, his friend was good friends because back in the day, obviously Pete Rose loved to gamble. He still does, actually.
He has a betting podcast still.
Yeah, but he loved the ponies too. So they went to the Kentucky Derby together.
He still
friend,
does.
He said he just bought everything. He picked up the whole tab, and they were drinking expensive stuff. And
I didn't know he had money.
Huh?
I didn't know he had money.
Well, this was in the '90s. I guess memorabilia. He was making money selling memorabilia. That's why his signature
it's worth nothing.
Yeah, because he signed the more you
still does.
If your signature is constantly in circulation, the value is not the same.
My brother, and I tell this story all the time, and I know we're way over. We'll finish up, but my brother for holiday one year surprised me with a case with the hat signed, and he actually wrote my name on the hat.
Yeah, he'll do whatever. He'll say, "No, I didn't bet on baseball." Whatever you want him to sign, he goes out all the time. But the less you sign, the more your signature's worth. Koufax, he was a guy too. He only signed a little bit. He doesn't have a lot in circulation. But Nick, it's that time. First of all, I got to get on out of here. It was a fun show, and thanks for joining me. I'm going to try to find again a holiday weekend. It was hard for me to get a guest on for Friday, but next week I'll surprise you with somebody. Meanwhile, I'm going to enjoy the weekend. Hopefully, when I let you go, the Mets are winning this game. I don't know. It's a little after 1:00 as we're talking right now, Nick?
Actually, it's almost 2:00 as we speak.
Wow, we really went rolling today. That's me. You get me rolling, I don't stop. Hey, listen, guys, girls, wherever you are, thanks for joining us. Make sure to give us a follow. Empty the Bench Podcast Network. You're going to love some of the shows, the different shows. And next Friday, I guess we're going to have a big show. The big boys are joining the network now, Nick, huh?
Yeah, the Big Bad Broadcast next Friday. Clint Howard, first guest. We have a bunch of other shows. And like you see on the screen here, Inside the Numbers with Danny B, Monday and Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern. We will drop these shows. When we have guests, we kind of have to record because it's a little more difficult. If we can get somebody live at 4:00, then we would do it. But yeah, just there's a lot coming. This show is going to expand too. We have more ideas on the horizon of things.
It's just, listen, it's a work in progress. I've been doing sports radio now since '94. This is a new venture for me. Obviously, I dabbled with podcasts in the past, but it never really went far. People gave up. I gave up. But this is good. I don't have to worry. You're reliable. You make it easy. You make it fun. We talk a lot, and I look forward to the future with Empty the Bench.
So, yeah, I think that's about it, and we'll be back.
I got to go to the bathroom. I got to get on out of here.
We'll be back for the Monday Mania, as they say.
We'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great holiday weekend. Enjoy. And let's go Mets, I guess. I don't know what else to say at this point.
We'll see you next week.
Good.